Bring you this story. The Gauteng Social Development Department is closing down a Frail care center in Johannesburg. The department says it's acted on alarming reports of abuse and disagreeable living conditions for the elderly people there. For more than 10 years, Abida's Frail Care Center claims to have been providing care to the elderly. However, the provincial department now says it does not have any records of its existence. My colleague, senior reporter Barry Bateman, investigating this, joining us now this afternoon in the studio. Barry, good afternoon and thank you very much for your time. Can I just begin with a general question first? The department says it does not have any records of the existence of the Abida's Frail Care Center. But how come it's been operating? Aren't you supposed to get some kind of social development kind of permission or registration at least for you to exist properly?
Yeah, absolutely. You should be registered with the relevant department. But you then got to perhaps ask the question, if a facility like this was able to operate for 10 years without any registration, well, where was the oversight aspect? It must have come out somewhere or at some point that there was this facility in a community that was operating that appeared to have, by its own account, a registration number. Why was it never picked up through the oversight work that the department ought to be doing?
Where was the inspection as well? Thank you very much. Now, the department is saying it's going to enforce the closure of the facility. Why are they taking this route?
Well, what they did was this followed complaints of abuse at the facility, and they then initiated the investigation. They went to go and investigate. What they found was rather appalling conditions. This is according to their statement that they've issued. They say that it is overcrowded for one. We don't have an exact number of how many people were there, but it's not a very big facility. Apart from that, there was flouting of various pieces of legislation, including the legislation related to the care of the elderly, but also then labour laws. For example, the carers that were employed there, Dan, were apparently being kept on 24-hour shifts. They would just continually be on duty. I mean, that's flouting laws of all kinds. And just the conditions themselves and where the food was prepared was also a problem. Ventilation was an issue. You know, I suppose we take it for granted, but if we're looking at what's happening with the coronavirus and COVID and so on, these are the kind of things you need to take seriously, particularly when dealing with the aged.
Yeah, there was a complaint by a family of one of the residents. What do we know about this particular complaint that has alerted the authorities to begin acting in this way?
I spoke to Virginia Kepler earlier, and she's the spokesperson for the Callaghan family. And it's Fatima Callaghan it's her son who filed this complaint. And what they found was that Fatima Callaghan, she had suffered broken bones. She had been left with bruises on her body. She alleged that she was being denied her medication, that she was being starved. And this had gone on for an extended period because she was too scared to report it for fear of being further denied access to food. It was discovered when the son eventually forced his way into the facility and found his mother there. She had a black eye at the time. They also say, Kepler was telling me how when the mother was placed into the care of this facility, she was able to speak and she could walk, albeit with great difficulty. She was a little bit mobile. She has lost all of that. She's unable to communicate properly and she cannot walk anymore.
Now, you were there earlier today. Tell us, what did you find?
Well, you know, as I alluded to earlier, it's not a very big facility. It's in a suburban street. It's a home that's been converted into this frail care facility. We knocked on the big sign that was outside that said Abida's Frail Care Center. That's been removed off the wall. You can see where the paint had been around it. There's no more sign to advertise that. But I managed to speak to somebody there who we understood to be a manager, wouldn't identify herself. But she said it's not true that they're actually closing down. She says that the Social Development Department had identified some problems which they are going to be addressing, and they'll be up and running as they ordinarily would within a month.
And what about the family's claims of abuse?
They wouldn't address any of that. I spoke to the owner, Abida. I forget, her surname escapes me at the moment, Dan, but I have spoken to the owner of the facility. And she says to me, she wouldn't give me a comment, only to say that the allegations made against her in the facility are false. And I've left her with my details. She'll get hold of me when the time is right. But they deny the allegations.
Thank you very much. Barry Bateman on the update there of the goings-on at Abida's Frail Care Center. That's supposed to look after one of the most vulnerable amongst us in society, the elderly. But there are stories going around. Now the Social Development Department is investigating and it might face closure. But they don't want to go on the record. Barry Bateman was there. They had an opportunity to state their case properly, but they refused just to retort that the allegations against them are false. Barry Bateman, knowing him, he's going to keep at this one until we find out more about it.